Hey there, it's Monica Brooks, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite shows, The Pitt. And I recently saw a post on LinkedIn from an old colleague who was talking about The Pitt. And it is something I have been meaning to do a podcast on. So I was like, I want to invite her on and talk about this more. And she's also working on a project with me because she is my go-to person for workplace culture, among some of the other things that I feel like she's an expert in. So I don't think there's really any big spoiler alerts. We're just going to talk about the show, talk about the characters. That's the thing I love watching is personalities. And even like in the workplace, like Dr. Santos, like knows her stuff, but hard to get along with. I love watching Dr. Robbie and his leadership style, and we'll get into that a little bit more on the podcast. So if you are ready, let's get started. Welcome to the Becoming a Better You podcast. My name is Monica Brooks, and I'm a self-improvement enthusiast who is eager to share tips and strategies to help you become the best version of yourself. As an inspirational speaker who transitioned from a corporate career, I'm here to guide you on your journey towards enhancing your overall human experience. If you're ready to take the first step towards becoming the best version of yourself, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome, Zoe, to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
I love how our paths have recrossed lately because we used to work for the same organization. We have since reconnected and gone our own kind of entrepreneurial ways. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing.
Yes, so I help organizations build the right mindset and the right mechanics for a great workplace culture. I've been leading teams for 20 plus years. I worked specifically in kind of the D&I field, doing a lot of learning and development for a decade. And I kept seeing over and over again that these companies just throw training at everything, but I kept thinking, well, inclusion itself isn't just a training problem, right? It's an operational problem. And so you can coach leaders all day, but if your systems are messy or opaque, right? If people don't know how you share knowledge or how decisions are made or how you communicate, then you're not really creating belonging. You're just creating more friction. So I think about belonging and leadership and all that good stuff really from a design problem space, right? You can't train your way out of a design problem. So I work with organizations now to help them make sure that the mindset's there, but also that the mechanics are in place so that you can have a really sustainable, awesome, amazing workplace culture.
Now, I know we're here to talk about the Pitt, but I just have a quick question about something you said. When you say a mindset, are we talking about leadership mindset? Are we talking about everyone?
I think we're talking about everyone. I mean, often it starts with leaders, right? Because the shadow they cast is big. And they're the ones who need to help support everyone along the way. But I think it's good for everyone. Culture isn't created by one person alone. It's something that we all co-create every single day together. And so I think everybody has to be of the right mindset to really push a culture forward or complete a change initiative or make anything big and grand and wonderful happen.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so excited because we both took this leap of faith into doing something we both love. So it's always nice to connect with other people. But I saw a LinkedIn post you did, and it was specific to the Pitt. I had been wanting to do a podcast, and I'm like, Zoe's the person to do this with me. So there were so many things we started to talk about, and it's going to be hard to probably keep this short, but maybe talk about lessons we're learning from this. Anything you're seeing, even as far as a culture, what's working, what's not working, on the Pitt.
Well, the thing that really got me posting about the Pitt in the first place, and I love the Pitt, right? Just in general, hands down.
Yeah.
Love it so much. I watched the first season by myself, and then before I watched the second season, I made my husband rewatch the first season with me because I needed to have more people to talk about the Pitt.
Yes. Yeah. And here you are. Perfect.
So there was this one episode where Dana, and the charge nurse, the amazing woman, is training this new nurse. And one of the things that she says is that they have this safe word that they use. And their safe word was hula hoop. And it just pinged in my brain about when I used to manage a health center on a college campus. And we had a kind of a safe action, you could say. So it wasn't really a safe word, but it was something that we did, that one person would do to let others know that they needed help. And I hadn't thought about that in years. And it was to throw a shoe, which now, looking back on it, is not a very good or safe thing to do as your safe action. But that's what we did. So if you saw a shoe flying, you knew, like, this coworker needs some help. I got to go. But the reason that it worked is what was sticking with me and why I wrote the post. And it was because we all had clearly defined what an action was beforehand when things go south. So there had been the communication beforehand that, sometimes things get kind of dicey and we need to be able to rely on each other. And so to do that, we need to have a signal. We need to create a signal. And then everybody has to make sure that they're trained in what that is and that you follow through with the actions that happened afterward. And it's a simple thing, but I work a lot with companies that are trying to get hybrid right now because hybrid work is big and I don't think it's going anywhere and I'm a big proponent of it. But it's even harder to have a safe word when people are dispersed, right? How does that concept translate into hybrid? And so that's what kind of started the post and made me think about it. And just the idea that you really need to have clear communication protocols set up from the get-go for when things are going to go south, but for all sorts of other things as well, if you want your team to really work together well and collaborate well and be on the same page.
So how would we use that safe word today in the workplace? Like, let's say there's someone listening, they work with a team before things go south. So like, it's not even going south yet. It's like alert. So how does that work in a situation like that?
That's a great question. And I think there's a couple answers, right? So the first one I would say, like, pre things going south, right? Alerting people that things maybe things are going to go south, right? Like, that could be as simple as instituting a check-in, right? Like a daily check-in that you do with your team every morning, right? Get on a virtual call or crowd around the same space and kind of talk a little bit about what's on everybody's plates. How's everybody doing today? What's the mindset that you're going into the day with? Because then, if you didn't know that Tanya was maybe not at 100% today, you know about it. And so she might need some help later on. Then there's like the emergency piece of it, right? So when things go south, and that's still something you need to work out ahead of time. I would say put that in your onboarding, right? Like when you have a new team member joining, make sure that they know whatever the protocol is for when you need to get everyone's attention immediately. Because no matter if you're working in the emergency department or if you're working, at the mall, there are times when you need to get everybody's attention on something. So what is that mechanism and how do you make sure that you're communicating it out way before you might need it and that you're keeping it kind of like in the training, refreshed, we're running some drills on it.
So I love the idea of a safe word. I know we're talking about work, but also in our personal lives. Like my friend and I, we have a safe word that we use when our mental health isn't doing well. And maybe like you mentioned before things go south, it's like, hey, I'm going to use this word. And that person already knows what that means. And I think it's really helpful because it's not always easy to express feelings and emotions, but having a safe word is like, yep, this is where I'm at. And it needs some attention without actually saying it. I want to talk a minute about Dr. Santos. As far as like, I know your thing is like the culture and organizations working effectively. I feel like a lot of companies have a Dr. Santos where she is really good at what she does, but overconfident and doesn't work well with people. Yeah. Like, what are your general observations of her and how would you manage someone like that?
My overall observations of her is that she's excellent at what she does. She's really secure. She's really confident. She knows she has kind of the learning and the skills that it takes to succeed. But she's never probably worked all that much on the way she comes off to people. Empathy, what it's like to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's those more people-centric qualities that might be missing. And it could also be part of the environment, right? Maybe she has worked on those things, but she gets into work mode and she's just a little bit of a beast, right? She's going to go for it 100%. When I've had people on like that on my team before, and I can think of one specific circumstance where that was the case, like knew what she was doing, handled the logistics of the job so well, but when it came to working with the people around her, everybody was always walking on eggshells. They never wanted to upset her. And I remember what we did. I had a conversation with her one day. I pulled her aside and we started to talk. And I really just went into it with some open questions. Like I tried to be really curious because my experience of her was not that she was always like this dark cloud. It was when she got really stressed and then she'd kind of lash out at people. So I wanted to hear from her own words what was going on in her head because I don't think that was coming through a lot. And it took, some conversations and some coaching and just some introspective work on both of our parts probably for her to realize what her next step should be. And she ended up actually moving on to a different job after a few months. But I remember visiting her at her new workplace and she was like so happy.
That's what you
Like,
want, right?
yeah, she was like the happiest, most engaged I'd seen her. And so she really needed to have a change and she really needed somebody to listen.
It sounds like Dr. Santos, the character, is aware to a point of how she comes across.
Yes.
There's a time where Dr. Santos calls Dr. Javati, calls her like a name. What was it?
Yeah.
Crash?
Crash.
Yeah,
She's gonna,
Crash. And Dr. Javati tells her not to do that.
yeah.
And she does it anyway. She
Yeah.
continues to do it. Do you think that character is aware of her behavior and how it's like it has to be done on purpose? Like I'm imagining she's doing
Mm.
this on purpose. Like she knows who she is, that cocky
Yeah. Yeah.
person, but she's not really taking into consideration someone else's boundary.
Yeah.
How does that play out in the workplace, do you think?
Well, I think people like that, from what I've seen, tend to have a couple different trajectories, right? So either they are so good at what they do that they get to keep doing it, right? Nobody ever reins them in. They're so excellent and they're meeting all their metrics. And so they just keep kind of excelling in the field, even though they're kind of destructive to the people around them. I've seen that happen a lot. I think the other thing that can happen is they keep going with those same behaviors, they're doing well, and then they eventually encounter someone or have something happen that sends them in the other direction, right? Like whether that's a great leader who takes the time and makes the effort to connect with them and find out what's going on. Maybe it's a change in their personal life. Maybe it's, oh, I made a mistake and now I'm taking myself down a couple notches because of something that happened. But right, it can go either way. I've certainly met a lot of leaders who have not paid as much attention to the rest of the people on the team and their emotions and their experience, but are still excelling.
I'm curious to see where the episode will take her because I feel at times in life we all get humbled.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I'm curious what that situation will be because she seems strong as a rock
Yes.
and nobody is really built that way. You have this tough exterior for a reason. And I'm curious to see what will end up happening with her and how she I don't know, shows up on the other side and shows that soft spot and
Yeah.
that empathy that you were talking about. Because I think you can have people in the workplace who are incredible. They're smart, they get the job done, but they're hard to work with. And that's tough. And unless a leader is willing to give feedback and continued coaching, it will just continue.
Yeah. Well, and often I think usually leaders aren't necessarily rewarded for having a great team atmosphere, right? Like they have metrics that they're trying to meet. And so when you meet those metrics, you get the promotion or you get the raise, the good things happen. Whether you're treating your team well or not isn't always connected to the bottom line in such like a black and white way. So
Yeah.
if we don't measure those things, then will we ever really pay attention to them as much as we should?
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the reasons why, when I was watching The Pit, I wanted to do a podcast initially is because of Dr. Robbie. I thought to myself, man, if every leader and parent could embody a lot of Dr. Robbie's leadership, because I love parenting. Like, I love, there's always lessons and things that I'm doing and try to empower my kids. One of the things that stands out to me with him being an attending is his ability to step back
Mm-hmm.
and let someone else make a decision.
Yeah.
And I think the tendency people think like, oh, I'm the go-to as a leader. I'm the go-to as a parent to fix things. That's not actually your role.
Right.
Your role is to teach others how to do the job. And I also appreciate how he just kind of is very for the most part, cool as a cucumber.
Yeah.
And, there's very stressful situations, life and death, and he remains calm. I think at one point he had even asked someone, like, what does your gut tell you? Like,
Yeah.
he may know the answer, but it's giving the opportunity for other people to succeed is what I love about him. And I think like we could learn so much from attendings because they are there to teach. They're there to help you and teach as well. So, what are some of the things you've noticed about Dr. Robbie's leadership?
Oh, very similar to you. Just kind of the space that he creates for other people to step in and try, right? Without rushing into that like hero mode. And I've led teams where I have definitely let that be my role, right? Where I've been like, I'm going to swoop in and I'm going to save the day and then I feel good and I pat myself on the back and my team's so happy now, which feels great in the moment, but it doesn't teach them anything, right? There's no independence being taught there. And you can't do everything. You shouldn't want to because you're not going to get the best results. You want all those minds working on these things. So I've definitely noticed that his ability to kind of like wait a beat, like even in those moments where it's super intense, right? And time is of the essence and there's a person on the operating table or on the gurney or whatever it might be, he can still pause and not fill the space with his own words and instead turn it over to someone and say, Dr. Javadi, right? What do you think about this? McKay, what would you do in this situation? And make sure to kind of like offer that up to the different people in the room and not ignore them and like be able to hear them and kind of facilitate the conversation so they can get to the best place, because he's never going to do something that's going to harm the patient, right? If he asks, what are you going to do in this situation? And then they say something that's like totally wrong and he knows it, he'll step in probably or ask someone else to kind of like, another opinion, please, so that we can kind of work this out. But he's not just directing. He's not just telling them what to do. And I think that makes such a huge difference for people's development, right? Lets you try to figure it out on your own.
I agree completely. And I think that's where I think even as parents, we want to be the hero. We want to
Yeah.
solve their problem, but what are we teaching them but to rely on us? And as a leader and parent, that may fill your ego. Like you said, like, yes,
Totally.
I did it. I saved the day. I feel like the hero, but that's just your ego that's being filled. And again, whether you're a parent or a leader, it's like now you're enabling them to come to you, but that is not the goal.
Right.
If you think like the attending, it's give them space to respond, to see
Yeah.
what direction they were going to go. And once you know, like, ooh, that wasn't a good answer, then that opens the door to they need more development in this area.
Right, right. Now you kind of know a little bit more about where they're at and where you can provide some help and where you can step back because they've probably got this.
Yes.
And I have to thank you, Monica, because I was watching a webinar that you did, and I can't remember which one it was, but you had such a good thing to say about like not being that hero for your children and letting them figure things out on their own. And so I was like, I'm going to put it into action. And for my kids, like they have chores, right? They get an allowance, they do their chores. And I was always having to remind them how to do their chores. And you said this one thing in the webinar where it was like, instead of being the one to remind them, ask them how they're going to remember. Like, how are you going to remember to do that? What will you do differently to remember that? And I was like, ooh. So I use that on my kids all the time now. And they're like, my daughter puts it in her cell phone and she schedules like cleaning the cat water fountain.
See, like it's that. So I think the webinar you're talking about is the power of asking versus telling,
Yeah,
right? Like we want to not say, remember to do your chores, or Dr. Robbie saying, remember to do it this way.
yeah,
Okay, so what are you going to do next? And if they say, I don't know, well, then what have you tried? Or what can you try? And I love asking questions
yeah,
because you empower people to make decisions. And you're like, that sounds amazing.
yeah,
Like, great job.
yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about Dr. Ahashimi because my first take was that she has a lot of ideas, but instantly wants to start changing things. And I think sometimes leaders may also do that. Like you see a lot of opportunities, a lot of gaps. What was your general observation of her?
I really like Dr. Halashimi. And I feel for her in that she's coming in with a lot of positive intent, I think, and trying to kind of work with the team, but also push the team a little bit. And Robbie's got like all his walls up, right? Like Dr. Robbie is like, Nuh-uh, this is my team. We know what we're doing. Don't want to hear it. But my take on her is that she's coming from a place where she's got a lot of experience. She's seen a lot. She's trying some new things. They're really working and they're panning out. And she wants to push the team forward, right? She sees where there's potentially some room for improvement. She's got some ideas. I think the hard part there is that she hasn't taken the time to build the relationships that you need for when you're trying to put change into action. Like if you're just the new person who comes in with all the new ideas, people can sometimes sense that as loss, right? I'm losing something. I'm losing part of our team or part of our process, and then become resistant. So I don't know, maybe like build those relationships a little more first, spend a little more time in the ER, really getting to know what the current state is, because it also seems like she's doing it very early on. Maybe she hasn't seen what's going on with her own eyes yet. So taking the time to live in the experience a little bit, talk to the people a little bit, and then start introducing the change would probably go over a little better than just kind of
Yeah.
like flying in with it. Probably could make it easier by not being quite so territorial.
Yeah, there's that other side of it. And I think one of the key words that you mentioned was positive intent, because when someone comes in, we feel it might be a threat to our territory. Like,
Yeah,
well, this has been working, this is great. And yeah, there's room for improvement. But if you looked at it like she's trying to say something and trying to bring these opportunities forward, that would feel different than make it feel like a threat.
right.
The other piece I loved that you just mentioned was the relationship piece of it. She's not wrong in a lot of the things that she's saying. But when you don't take the time to build relationships with people you work with, that's where the walls go up. Like,
Yeah,
you don't know me, you know
right.
nothing about me and what I do and how we work here. So, in one of the workshops that I do, I ask the audience a question. It's fill in the blank, and it's blank is the foundation of effective teams.
Mm.
And I hear a lot of different things, but the answer is relationships. That's how we work together. But I will tell you the number one answer I get, and maybe this is even a better answer, is people say psychological safety
Oh, yeah.
is the foundation of effective teams. So I kind of wanted to get your take on the pit and how do you feel that it is a psychologically safe place
Mm.
for everyone?
Ooh, I think it's a psychologically safe bubble for most of them. Like I think psychological safety is absolutely imperative for a team to really flourish. Just lay it out there. Like you're never going to get a high trust team if you don't have that. But I think that it's also so subjective and it's also depending on context, right? So different people experience it differently. Someone might feel psychologically safe, another person might not. The day, like what's happening during the day, can shift how you experience psychological safety or whether you don't. But I think in terms of the pit, like Dr. Robbie does a great job of building that little protective bubble for his team. You can tell that they know that he has their backs. They feel safe enough to say something and to question each other and to offer unpopular opinions. It doesn't always feel like warm and friendly when they do it, but psychological safety isn't always about being warm and friendly. Like that's not what it is. So I think that he really does a good job of creating that, especially in season 1. I think in season 2 we might be floundering a little bit, I'll be honest. And I may not be totally caught up on the episodes, but he's done some things where I'm like, ooh. But I think he's trying to create it, especially in season 1. Like you can see that in action. But then I think their overall environment is super not psychologically safe, right? Like the hospital system itself, where there's kind of like that antagonism with Gloria, who's like the chief officer of the hospital. And there's kind of like that antagonism where like Gloria wants us to do this, but we're not going to do that, right? That's a little bit of a rub. And, just kind of like the atmosphere that they work in an ED is potentially traumatizing sometimes, right? Like there are things that are going to happen that are going to be hard for you to deal with. And so safe might not be the word that I would attribute to that. Necessary. I mean, right, we need those spaces are going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can't make everything 100% safe all the time. But yeah, I think that's like there's a bubble of psychological safety. What do you think, Monica?
I think it's a great take on it. I think it's safe to fail. I think
Yes.
that's important. That you can have the wrong answer and that's okay.
Yes.
You can mess up, and as long as you're learning from it, that's okay. I think it feels psychologically safe when your leadership wants to see you succeed,
Hmm.
period. Like it's they're not threatened by you
Yeah.
or your skill, and they want the best for you. Like so there's so many pieces to that,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
psychological safety. And I'm like reflecting now, like, okay, was my team where I worked, were they psychologically safe? Because it's where we spend so much of our time, and the people that we're with, and these relationships. And I want to be able to feel safe giving you feedback and feel like I'm not going to be retaliated against. So, like there's just so many different
Totally.
aspects where you could take this, but I love your take on that as far as like in this bubble, it's psychologically safe. And I think Dr. Robbie does help with that. And I'm curious to see how Dr. Al-Hashimi will
Yeah.
contribute to that in the future when
Totally.
she gets to know people and they get to know her.
Yeah. Yeah. But you just, I mean, with the show though, you just don't know. I feel like
Yeah,
there's a
because
lot.
there's a backstory I haven't seen yet to Dr. Al-Hashimi. There's
Yes.
something there.
For sure. Because of
Yes.
like her reaction to the infant, right?
Yes.
Like we
Yes.
know that there's more, but we don't know what it is yet.
Like all of us though, right?
Yeah.
We show ourselves to the world, but then there's always this piece of us that stays a bit hidden. But that all impacts how we show up in the world. It impacts how we show up at work, our relationships with each other, and I'm excited to see where it goes,
Yes.
the whole storyline. So I've heard people who work in the ER say this is like as close as it gets to like real life.
I've
I
heard the same.
mean, they're showing maggots and rats, right? Like
Yes.
there's so many things.
I do want to understand like what is going on in Robbie's head in terms of Dr. Langdon. How in season 2, what's happening with Dr. Langdon that really changes Dr. Robbie's leadership style a ton, right? Like for everyone
Yes.
else, he can be that safe space. He can be forgiving of mistakes that have been made. But for Dr. Langdon, he is not. Right? There's no coaching out of this hole. It's just like a wall. And so I'm really interested to find out like where does that storyline go? Because it is such a different side to Robbie than we've seen previously.
I think that's a great point, and I it's like his Achilles heel
Yeah.
right now, as because we're like, oh my gosh, he's great, but now it's like, I wouldn't have handled it that way. Like just like
Yeah.
he's apologized, and you can tell he's hurt
Totally.
by what has happened and not knowing how to work through that. You brought up Dr. Langdon, and there was something about Dr. Santos I wanted to bring up, where her personality is I've said this, I'm not the first one to say it, I can't remember where it came from, but like all of our skills
Hmm.
can work for us or against us. Like I can be an
Mm.
overachiever, which is great, but works against me when I'm trying to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Dr. Santos, this personality of hers is like it works against her at times with relationships,
Yeah.
but it really worked for her when she had to turn in Dr. Langdon.
Totally. Right. Right. She did the right thing, even
Yeah.
though she knew that there was going to be like some uncomfortable repercussions that happened from that. It
Yes.
was still
Yes.
absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah. But it shows you that it could go either way. Like your
Yeah.
strengths and your weaknesses, like it's like on the spectrum of, yeah, it works great for me here, but not here, and vice versa. So that was just an interesting little thing on her turning in Dr. Langdon. So but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Dr. Robbie manages that relationship, because I think he's showing what we all feel
Hmm.
when we're
Right.
hurt,
Right.
is that we don't want anything to do with someone, but that's not how this works. Like we have to learn how to deal with conflict and disappointment, and
Yeah.
when our trust is broken, that's probably I mean, we've all felt that when someone has broken our trust, and I think Dr. Robbie is displaying that's how we feel. Like
Yeah.
that's
That's
exactly
true.
what we want to do.
His filter is gone when it
Yeah.
comes to Dr. Langdon. And because
Yeah.
trust was broken. And probably because they were, it seemed, rather close. Like, that relationship had been a really strong, really good one, right? He was going to nominate Langdon for some fancy thing that I don't remember what it was, right? But he was going to do that. And then to have that trust stripped away.
Yeah. And I know that it's been mentioned before, and like I've done trainings about like the emotional deposits we make, like, and then that's like once it's withdrawn and someone breaks your trust, it's really hard to make those deposits again, like into that same bank, because it's not easy to get back. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think we've all dealt with relationships that have been challenging, and I can't wait to see where it goes and how he ends up working through his feelings, which can be a really hard thing when we're hurt.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep tabs on you and how you're enjoying the pit after this, because
we need to just talk about the pit more for us.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, please just text me anytime. I'd be like, did you see tonight's episode? I feel like I was done with the season though, but they're still coming out with episodes. I don't even know. I can't. Okay.
I think I'm around 4 p.m. maybe. I think there's at least like 3 or 4 more coming.
Well, I am certainly looking forward to watching the rest of the episodes and the characters and see where this all goes. Zoe, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. Where can people find out more information about you?
Oh, yeah. Feel free to check out my website. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I am always happy to have a virtual coffee chat about workplace culture.
I will be sure to put your website and your LinkedIn information in the show notes. Zoe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Monica. This was loads of fun, and I will definitely talk about the pit anytime.
Thank you so much for joining Zoe and I on the podcast today. Until next time.